Perfect. I'll build this step by step with you. Below is a strong, cinematic intro plus hook that sets the mood for the whole series. When you want the next piece, tell me the part name you'd like me to write first, e.g. Part 1, The River Light, and I'll write that full approximately 1,000-word chapter. And finish it with a cliffhanger. The night is a velvet thing, pressed soft against your eyes. Breathe in slow, feel the air cool like glass, the hush of cities sliding off into distant lights. Somewhere beyond the fences and the street lamps, the sky is a river of black and silver, constellations you know by name. Satellites marching like tired patrols, and one endless question orbiting above all of them. Are we alone? Tonight I want you to fall asleep with a different kind of lullaby. Not the soft hum of ocean waves, not the steady thump of a distant train. Instead, let me trace the thin, electric line between ordinary nights and the moments when that line snaps, and something else steps through. These are not tales meant to keep you awake with fear. They are small, tidy horrors wrapped in the warmth of human voice, stories told close, as though sharing a secret under a blanket. They want to live in the corners of your mind where dreams are made. There's a careful art to telling abduction stories at bedtime. We lower the lights with words. We let the cadence slow. We paint each scene with elements that feel familiar, the cotton of a sweater, the hum of the refrigerator, a dog's soft whine in the yard. Then, like the ocean reclaiming a shoreline, we let the uncanny roll in, a whisper in a language your tongue almost recognizes. The geometry of a light that isn't a light, the cold like the inside of a winter river. We move deliberately. We let the reader cradle each ordinary detail until the extraordinary slips into place and feels almost inevitable. You will meet 7 people in these nights. Some of them will be old and sharp, some young and wide-eyed. Some will be ordinary parents, a late-shift nurse, a man who loves to count the hairs of his own beard. Each will open a small door and show you the room beyond. Each will have a memory that is not quite theirs to keep. Each will return, if they can, with a scar that is mostly invisible, and a story threaded through with static and strange, luminous geometry. The world that holds these stories is comfortable enough, a town with a diner that closes at 2, a commuter train that sighs through the valley at dawn, satellite dishes gleaming like beetles in the rain. But under that comfort lies an old seam. The sky's skin is thin in certain places, and when the conditions are right, a certain humidity, a certain temperature, a certain constellation hanging like a coin something crosses. They do not always come with thunder. Sometimes they rive the way moths rive, patient, inevitable, and so precise it feels like a demonstration. There's a keeper of these accounts, a very human thing. Call her the archivist or the night caller, or simply the woman at the back table of the closed cafe, who writes down confessions on paper napkins. She collects fragments, radio transmissions that die mid-syllable, a leather boot found on a ridge with no owner, an old VHS tape with holes burnt through where light should have been. She circulates them like lullabies to those who will listen. Tonight, she has placed 7 envelopes on the table. Within each, a life tilted just a degree, and that tilt made all the difference. Listen for rhythm. Listen for the small normalities the abductors mirror, the way they mimic a father's voice, the way they can reproduce the exact angle of a bedside lamp. Listen for what the abducted cannot say directly, a sense of being watched by geometry, an intelligence that thinks in diagrams rather than words, a sorrow so vast it tastes like metal. And remember, not every missing minute is filled with violence. Some of the returned are quiet, changed in the way someone is changed after traveling through a monastery at dawn, softer at edges, with an interior light that is not ours. Now, for tonight's opening, a thread to pull that will lead to the first room. Picture a small river town between 2 ridgelines, where the fog sits like a used shawl across the water. Imagine a boy who has never looked away from a comet's tail, who names the stars as if they were old friends. Imagine the hum of an old radio bringing the world into his bedroom at 2 in the morning. Imagine a sound that is not the radio, an answering note from a place between frequencies. Imagine that the sky leans in and speaks in a voice that feels like the back of your neck. Being touched by cold copper. He thinks it is curiosity at first. He thinks perhaps someone is signaling. He goes outside barefoot. The grass is sharp and alive under his soles. The comet, that thin, impossible smear, has hardened into a bright waiting eye above the river. The air tastes of iron. His dog whimpers as if remembering something, and then the light folds. A heartbeat later, his world is a white corridor, and he is halfway through the ceiling of his bedroom. He will never be able to tell precisely which moment belonged to his own life, and which to the other thing's design. There will be memories stitched from both. That is where we begin. I will tell you that boy's night with the calmness of someone who has read the report 100 times, the same sentence shaped differently with each retelling, the same small, unstoppable wonder. But before I do, before I give you the first name and the first set of rooms and instruments, and whispered metaphors for things that are not instruments at all, I need to ask you something simple. Which chapter name would you like me to write first? Tell me the part name, or say start with part 1, and I'll open the envelope, step into that corridor, and tell you the boy's story in a voice made for night, slow, cinematic, and quietly unbearable. Each part will be around 1,000 words, narration-friendly, and will end with a cliffhanger that pulls you deeper into the seam under the sky. The town of Green Hollow was never known for much. A thin strip of diners, gas stations, and one rust-colored bridge over the Caldas River. By day it was just another nowhere town, a place where the world seemed to hold its breath. But at night, when the fog slid down from the ridges and spread itself across the water, Green Hollow belonged to the sky. 14-year-old Elliot Reeve had learned this early. His mother worked nights at the diner, and his father, well, no one ever asked too many questions about him. Elliot spent his nights with a second-hand telescope set up on the sagging balcony of their two-bedroom house overlooking the river. The telescope had a crack running across its lens, but Elliot didn't mind. He claimed the crack let him see more somehow, like the glass was offering him a different layer of truth. The summer of 1996 had been thick with heat and strange news. People in town whispered about the comet, the one that had been climbing across the sky for weeks, dragging a long silver veil behind it. Scientists on the radio said it was ordinary, beautiful, harmless. But people in Green Hollow swore it made their dreams vivid and strange. Some dreamed of doors opening where no doors had been. Some woke with nosebleeds or the faint static sound of voices still ringing in their ears. For Elliot, the comet was more than beautiful. It was alive every night. After brushing his teeth and feeding scraps of toast to his old hound Jasper, Elliot would step barefoot onto the balcony and aim the telescope toward the heavens. He would write down careful notes in a blue notebook, his handwriting cramped and urgent. He had names for the stars, his own names, because the official ones never felt intimate enough. Vega, Altair, Deneb, he kept those for tests at school. But in his notebook, they were Ember's Eye, the Ferryman, Silent Sister. The comet, though, he called it the Watcher. It didn't matter where he looked. Somehow, Elliot always felt it looking back. That night began as quietly as any other. Crickets sang their 1,000-part harmony in the tall grass. The diner's neon sign hummed faintly across the river. The air was heavy with the smell of wet wood and gasoline from the boats moored downstream. Elliot set up his telescope, the crack in the lens catching the moonlight like a scar. But when he focused on the comet, something was wrong. It wasn't drifting in its usual path. It had stopped, not slowed, not wavered. Stopped, as though it were an eye that had turned to fix itself on him, specifically. Elliot's stomach turned over. His fingers tightened around the telescope. He whispered out loud, though no one was there to hear him. "Hello." At first there was only the night, answering in silence. Then, through the telescope, the comet flickered. Just once, like a skipped frame of film. Elliot thought maybe it was his cracked lens. He adjusted the focus. His breath slowed, and then the sound began. A low hum. Not from the telescope, not from the sky, but from the bones of the house itself. The balcony railing trembled beneath his grip. The boards under his bare feet thrummed like guitar strings plucked by invisible fingers. The sound grew higher, sharper, until it was a thin needle piercing the night. Jasper, asleep by the door, jolted up with a whimper, hackles raised. The dog growled once, then went silent. as if a hand had pressed gently over his muzzle. Elliot dropped to his knees, clutching his ears. "Stop!" he cried. But the sound wasn't in his ears. It was inside. A frequency pitched somewhere between thought and dream. He crawled forward, desperate to look again. He pressed his eye to the telescope. The comet was gone. In its place hovered a geometric shape of light, impossible and seamless, spinning against the black canvas of the sky. Not a craft, not exactly. A shape his brain could barely process, part cube, part sphere, part something else. Every angle seemed to shift as he stared, as though the thing were deciding what form it wanted to take for him. And then it pulsed. The light rippled outward, washing over the river, the ridges, the diner lights across the bank. The entire world seemed drenched in pale silver for a heartbeat. And in that single heartbeat, Elliot was certain he was no longer standing on his balcony at all. For just a second, he was floating. Not falling, not rising, suspended. His body hung between places. The river was below, the stars above, and between them he drifted like a bead of mercury in weightless air. His hands clawed at nothing. His breath caught in his throat. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The hum inside him had swallowed even that. The silver light contracted, snapping back into the shape above the river. Elliot stumbled, finding himself once again barefoot on the balcony. His notebook had slipped from the railing and now lay open on the floorboards, pages fluttering in a wind that hadn't existed a moment ago. His pencil rolled to a stop against his toes. Elliot bent down shakily to grab the notebook and froze. Scrawled across the open page, in a handwriting not his own, were words he had never written. Words etched deep into the paper as if pressed by an invisible stylus. "We remember you." Elliot's chest tightened. His vision blurred at the edges. He looked up, eyes wide, just in time to see the light shift again, breaking apart into 3 smaller orbs, drifting slowly down toward the riverbank like lanterns on invisible strings. Jasper barked once, then twice, then fell into a low whine. The dog pressed himself against Elliot's legs, trembling. The orbs hovered over the water, their reflections rippling across the dark surface. For a moment, Elliot thought they might simply vanish. But then, as if in answer to his quickening breath, the 3 lights turned in unison. They were facing him. And then the world folded. For an instant, Elliot thought he had fallen asleep standing up. The river, the fog, the balcony, all of it slipped away like scenery pulled behind a curtain. What replaced it was silence. Not the kind of silence he knew from late nights in Green Hollow, with the whisper of crickets and the distant hum of trucks on the highway. This was absolute. No air moving, no blood in his ears. A silence so perfect it pressed against his skin. He opened his eyes, or maybe he simply was eyes now. It was impossible to tell. A corridor stretched ahead of him. White, endless. Walls that weren't exactly walls. They shone like polished bone, but every time he blinked, their edges seemed to bend or ripple, like heat above asphalt. The floor was smooth under his bare feet, warm as if it had been waiting for him. Jasper was gone. His balcony was gone. His notebook, his house, his town, the river, gone. Elliot's chest rose and fell in shallow bursts. He took a step. The sound of his footfall should have echoed, but it didn't. The corridor absorbed every sound, leaving him walking in a vacuum. "Hello?" His voice came out small. It didn't carry. It was swallowed before it even touched the air. He tried again, louder. "Is someone there?" Nothing. Only the corridor, stretching like a throat into the infinite. Elliot wanted to turn back, but when he looked over his shoulder, there was no balcony, no night sky, no comet. Just more of the same corridor, endless in both directions. He swallowed hard. His palms were damp. He thought about his mother at the diner, pouring coffee for tired truckers, unaware her son had been peeled out of the world like a page torn from a book. He thought about how, if he didn't come back, people might never know what happened. He'd be just another kid who vanished from a small town. A mystery whispered about until everyone forgot. Something shifted in the corridor. A sound. Subtle at first, a low clicking, like insects hidden in walls. Then a vibration through the floor, a faint thrumming that reminded him of the hum from before. His breath caught. He knew he wasn't alone. The air shimmered at the far end of the hall. A figure materialized, tall and impossibly thin, its outline distorted as if he were looking at it through water. Elliot squinted. For a second it seemed humanoid. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But then it flickered, and its limbs seemed to long, its proportions to narrow, its head to large, its skin, not skin at all, but a pearlescent surface that shifted with colorless light. Elliot stumbled back. His legs trembled. The figure did not walk, it glided. Each step was fluid, noiseless, as though it had never learned gravity. When it stopped before him, Elliot was struck by its eyes. Not eyes like his, no iris, no whites. Just a black, depthless orbs, liquid and infinite. Staring not at him, but through him. Elliot wanted to scream. Instead, the words came out as a whisper. "What do you want from me?" The being tilted its head. The movement was almost human, but not quite, too sharp, too precise. Its long fingers rose, and without touching him, Elliot felt a pressure at his temples. Not pain, but a push, a presence. And then, a voice. Not in his ears. In his mind. "You remember." The words rattled through his skull like echoes in a canyon. Elliot gasped. "No, I don't. I've never." The pressure deepened. Images flashed across his mind like lightning bolts, a younger version of himself. Barely 4 years old, standing in the yard with his toy truck, staring up at the same silver lights descending from the clouds. His father's face, pale with terror, dragging him inside, locking the doors. Shouting words Elliot couldn't remember. A fragment of a white room like this one. His tiny body lifted from his bed while Jasper barked furiously from the hallway. The memories ripped through him, each one burning like fire in his veins. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. "No, stop. That's not real," he cried. The being leaned closer. Its smooth, featureless face hovered inches from his own. Again, the voice filled his skull. "You are not new. You are returned." Tears stung Elliot's eyes. His chest heaved. He felt as if his mind had been pried open and rifled through. His most fragile places exposed. And then, the figure extended its hand. In its palm hovered a small, glowing object, a shard of light, spinning slowly, pulsing with a rhythm that matched his own racing heartbeat. It was mesmerizing, terrifying, magnetic. Elliot couldn't look away. The voice returned, quieter now, almost soothing. "Take it. You will remember what you were made for." Elliot's trembling hand rose against his will. His fingers hovered inches from the shard. Heat radiated from it, but not the heat of fire. The warmth of recognition, of something that belonged to him. His chest ached. His hand closed in. But just as his fingers brushed the shard, the corridor shuddered. The walls flickered like dying fluorescent lights. The being froze, its head snapping upward as if listening to something Elliot could not hear. The shard flickered wildly in its palm. And then, from far away, or perhaps inside him, came another voice. Not like the first. This one was jagged, urgent, angry. "He is not yours." The walls buckled. The white corridor cracked like glass under a hammer. The being's hand trembled. The shard blinked out of existence. Elliot stumbled backward, blinded by a sudden blast of light that swallowed everything. Light. At first, that's all there was. A blinding, formless wash that seared through Elliot's closed eyelids. He flung his hands up to shield his face, but the light wasn't on him. It was inside him. It threaded through his veins, pulsed in his teeth, burned behind his eyes. He stumbled, gasping, until the light thinned like fog parting before a breeze. The corridor was gone. The tall, pale figure was gone. Instead, Elliot stood in a place that had no horizon. A vast, shifting plain stretched out beneath his feet, black glass that reflected nothing. Above him, stars, but not in any constellation he recognized. The sky writhed with streaks of violet and green, as though the aurora itself had been tangled and torn. The silence here was different. Not oppressive, but waiting. Then the voice came again. The other voice. Not the calm, resonant tone of the first being. This one was rougher, edged like broken stone, carrying with it the unmistakable impression of urgency. "Do not listen to them." Elliot spun around. Hard hammering. Who are you? No figure appeared. Only the stars shifting, as if they had blinked in unison. You are marked. They have taken you before. They will take you again. But you are not theirs to keep. The words pressed against his thoughts like a tide. Elliot's knees trembled. I don't understand. What do you mean before? I've never, but he remembered. The flashes from the corridor hadn't been lies. His father's frantic hands. The lights over the yard. The feeling of being pulled upward by something invisible, while Jasper barked and barked. A night he had locked away, buried under ordinary days. Elliot's breath hitched. What did they want with me? Silence. Then, not only you, many, always, but you. Different. The word echoed through his ribs. Elliot wanted to ask why, but his voice caught. He felt suddenly small, like a pebble in the hand of something vast, then movement. The black glass floor rippled, concentric waves spreading outward as though something enormous had stepped just beneath its surface. Elliot staggered back. The glass quivered, cracked, and from the fractures spilled silver light. A shape rose, not the tall, gliding figure from the corridor. This one was heavier, shadowed, its outline flickering between forms. One moment it seemed insect-like, with too many limbs bending at impossible angles. The next it was a column of light with wings of static. Its presence pushed into Elliot's skull, a pressure so fierce it brought tears to his eyes. Do not let them place the shard in you. Elliot stumbled back, shaking his head. The shard? That thing they showed me? The being pulsed, its form convulsing like a damaged signal. It binds. It erases what was yours. You will no longer be only you. Elliot's heart pounded. He thought of the glowing fragment, the way it had throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He had wanted it, even feared it. The pull had been magnetic, irresistible. What if the shard had already touched him? What if it had already left something behind? His voice broke. I don't know what to do. The being bent low, its shifting head dipping close to his. Its voice was almost a growl now. Wake. The ground shattered. The black glass beneath Elliot's feet split into fragments, falling away into a starless void. He dropped with it, his scream swallowed by rushing air. The stars above spiraled, collapsing into a whirl of color. His body twisted, tumbled, until he was sure he would break apart molecule by molecule. And then, impact. He hit something soft, damp, grass. Elliot lay stunned, chest heaving. The air smelled of soil and river water. He rolled onto his side and blinked. Green hollow. He was back. The rusted bridge loomed in the distance. The neon diner sign glowed faintly through the fog. His house, his balcony, there, perched above the river. Jasper was barking frantically at the door, tail low, eyes wide. For a moment, relief swept through him like warm rain. He was home. He was safe. It had been a dream, a hallucination. His head swam. He pressed his palms into the wet grass, grounding himself. But then he saw it. On his wrist, a mark, glowing faintly through his skin. A perfect circle, etched in light, pulsing with a rhythm that was not his own. Elliot's stomach dropped. From the riverbank, across the black water, 3 lights rose. The same orbs he had seen before. They hovered just above the surface, unwavering, watching, and in his head. The 2 voices overlapped. You belong with us. Resist them. The pressure of both voices collided, tearing at the edges of his mind. His vision blurred. His knees buckled. And then the world tilted. The river seemed to lean upward, the lights closing in. The mark on his wrist burning hotter and hotter until it seared straight through him. Elliot tried to scream, but his throat sealed shut as if the air itself had betrayed him. The last thing he saw before darkness folded over him was the reflection of the 3 lights in the water and his own face in that reflection, staring back with eyes that were no longer entirely his. Elliot awoke to the sound of breathing, not his own, slow, ragged breaths, filling the air like a choir of sleepers. He forced his eyes open, vision swimming in a pale blue glow. His first thought was that he was back in the corridor. But no. The walls here were different. Not smooth bone white. These curved like the inside of a shell, ridged with patterns that shimmered faintly. As though alive, the floor beneath him was warm. pulsing faintly in time with something vast and unseen, as though he were lying on the chest of a sleeping giant, and he was not alone. Shapes surrounded him. Dozens of them, men and women, sprawled across the floor in various positions, their chests rising and falling. Some looked no older than Elliot. Others had gray hair, lined faces. They all wore the same expression, half-closed eyes, lips parted. As if they were caught between sleep and waking, Elliot's pulse thundered. He scrambled to his knees, scanning the room. Some of the people were dressed in clothes that seemed wrong, a woman in a floral dress. The fabric yellowed and frayed like something out of an old photograph. A man in a woolen coat with wide lapels. His shoes scuffed in a style Elliot had only seen in history books. A boy about Elliot's age wearing a baseball jersey, but the logo was unfamiliar, faded with time, as though it belonged to a team that hadn't existed in decades. It hit him like a weight. These people were not all from now. They were from different years, maybe different centuries. He staggered backward, colliding with something. A man's hand. Cold, limp, fingers twitching slightly as though moved by a dream. Elliot jerked away, bile rising in his throat. "What is this?" he whispered, voice trembling. A sound answered, a clicking hum, rising from the walls. The ridges pulsed brighter. Elliot froze, his breath caught in his throat. One of the sleepers stirred. A girl, maybe 17, with long dark hair plastered across her face. Her eyelids fluttered. She sat up slowly, groaning, eyes cloudy with disorientation. When she saw Elliot, she blinked, then whispered hoarsely, You too." Elliot crawled closer, desperate. "Where are we? What's happening? Do you know?" She shook her head, clutching her arms. "No, I was home. Then in the light, always the light." And then she broke off, squeezing her eyes shut. "I don't want to remember." Her words cut into Elliot like glass. Always the light. Before he could answer, another sleeper stirred. Then another. The room began to fill with groans, whimpers, murmurs in dozens of accents and tongues. People blinked awake, disoriented, frightened. Some wept openly. Some whispered prayers. The girl beside Elliot grabbed his wrist suddenly. Her eyes widened in horror. "You've got the mark." Elliot looked down. The glowing circle still pulsed faintly beneath his skin. Heat radiated from it, synchronizing with his heartbeat. "What does it mean?" he demanded. Her face went pale. "You're one of them." Before Elliot could protest, the wall behind them split open soundlessly. The air shifted. Figures entered. Not the tall, pearlescent beings from before. These were smaller, gray-skinned, spindly-limbed. Their heads were enormous, their black eyes glossy and bottomless. They moved with jerky precision, each step too quick, too light, as though they barely weighed anything at all. The crowd of awakened captives erupted in screams. Some scrambled to their feet, others shrank back in terror. The girl clutched Elliot's arm, digging her nails into his skin. The beings didn't react. They moved with mechanical calm, their long fingers flicking over unseen controls in the air. Beams of pale light descended from the ceiling, scanning over the captives like searchlights. One by one, the beams fixed on individuals. And when they did, those individuals rose helplessly into the air, limbs flailing. Cries strangled in their throats. They floated upward like marionettes pulled by invisible strings, vanishing into dark apertures that yawned open above. The screams grew louder. Some captives begged. Others prayed louder. One man tried to run, but as soon as his foot hit the threshold, he crumpled, unconscious. Dragged backward by nothing visible, Elliot's chest constricted. His breath came in shallow bursts. The girl clung to him. "Don't move. Don't let them see you." But Elliot already knew it wasn't about moving. The beings weren't choosing at random. They were following something else. And then, one of the beams fixed on him. The circle on his wrist flared, glowing brighter than ever. The girl gasped. No, his body lifted from the ground, weightless, paralyzed. He kicked, clawed, but it was useless. The air itself had become hands, pulling him upward. The room spun below, the girl's terrified face shrinking as he rose into the dark aperture. The last thing he saw before the shadows swallowed him was the rows of beings. their glossy eyes tilted up at him, cold and unreadable. Elliot awoke to the sound of breathing. Not his own, slow, ragged breaths filling the air like a choir of sleepers. He forced his eyes open, vision swimming in a pale blue glow. His first thought was that he was back in the corridor. But no. The walls here were different. Not smooth bone white. These curved like the inside of a shell, ridged with patterns that shimmered faintly. As though alive, the floor beneath him was warm, pulsing faintly in time with something vast and unseen. As though he were lying on the chest of a sleeping giant, and he was not alone. Shapes surrounded him. Dozens of them, men and women, sprawled across the floor in various positions, their chests rising and falling. Some looked no older than Elliot. Others had gray hair, lined faces. They all wore the same expression, half-closed eyes, lips parted. As if they were caught between sleep and waking, Elliot's pulse thundered. He scrambled to his knees, scanning the room. Some of the people were dressed in clothes that seemed wrong, a woman in a floral dress. The fabric yellowed and frayed like something out of an old photograph. A man in a woolen coat with wide lapels. His shoes scuffed in a style Elliot had only seen in history books. A boy about Elliot's age wearing a baseball jersey, but the logo was unfamiliar, faded with time, as though it belonged to a team that hadn't existed in decades. It hit him like a weight. These people were not all from now. They were from different years, maybe different centuries. He staggered backward, colliding with something. A man's hand. Cold, limp, fingers twitching slightly as though moved by a dream. Elliot jerked away, bile rising in his throat. "What is this?" He whispered, voice trembling. A sound answered, a clicking hum, rising from the walls. The ridges pulsed brighter. Elliot froze, his breath caught in his throat. One of the sleepers stirred. A girl, maybe 17, with long dark hair plastered across her face. Her eyelids fluttered. She sat up slowly, groaning, eyes cloudy with disorientation. When she saw Elliot, she blinked, then whispered hoarsely, You too?" Elliot crawled closer, desperate. "Where are we? What's happening? Do you know?" She shook her head, clutching her arms. "No, I was home. Then in the light, always the light." And then she broke off, squeezing her eyes shut. "I don't want to remember." Her words cut into Elliot like glass. Always the light. Before he could answer, another sleeper stirred. Then another. The room began to fill with groans, whimpers, murmurs in dozens of accents and tongues. People blinked awake, disoriented, frightened. Some wept openly. Some whispered prayers. The girl beside Elliot grabbed his wrist suddenly. Her eyes widened in horror. "You've got the mark." Elliot looked down. The glowing circle still pulsed faintly beneath his skin. Heat radiated from it, synchronizing with his heartbeat. "What does it mean?" he demanded. Her face went pale. "You're one of them." Before Elliot could protest, the wall behind them split open soundlessly. The air shifted. Figures entered. Not the tall, pearlescent beings from before. These were smaller, gray-skinned, spindly-limbed. Their heads were enormous, their black eyes glossy and bottomless. They moved with jerky precision, each step too quick, too light, as though they barely weighed anything at all. The crowd of awakened captives erupted in screams. Some scrambled to their feet, others shrank back in terror. The girl clutched Elliot's arm, digging her nails into his skin. The beings didn't react. They moved with mechanical calm, their long fingers flicking over unseen controls in the air. Beams of pale light descended from the ceiling, scanning over the captives like searchlights. One by one, the beams fixed on individuals. And when they did, those individuals rose helplessly into the air, limbs flailing. Cries strangled in their throats. They floated upward like marionettes pulled by invisible strings, vanishing into dark apertures that yawned open above. The screams grew louder. Some captives begged. Others prayed louder. One man tried to run, but as soon as his foot hit the threshold, he crumpled, unconscious. Dragged backward by nothing visible, Elliot's chest constricted. His breath came in shallow bursts. The girl clung to him. "Don't move. Don't let them see you." But Elliot already knew it wasn't about moving. The beings weren't choosing at random. They were following something else. And then, one of the beams fixed on him. The circle on his wrist flared, glowing brighter than ever. The girl gasped. No, his body lifted from the ground, weightless, paralyzed. He kicked, clawed, but it was useless. The air itself had become hands, pulling him upward. The room spun below, the girl's terrified face shrinking as he rose into the dark aperture. The last thing he saw before the shadows swallowed him was the rows of beings, their glossy eyes tilted up at him, cold and unreadable. Elliot's body rose like a doll on invisible strings. His chest heaved, but no sound escaped his throat. The aperture swallowed him whole, and the cries of the captives below were smothered by silence. He passed through a tunnel of shifting light. The walls rippled with geometric patterns, like liquid mirrors folding inward. His body floated forward, weightless, as though guided by currents in an unseen ocean. At last, he was lowered gently onto a smooth surface. His limbs unlocked. He stumbled, catching himself on hands and knees. His breath rattled in his lungs. The room was unlike anything he had yet seen. It was vast, a cathedral of light. Its domed ceiling stretched so high it dissolved into darkness. Round the circumference, columns of translucent material pulsed faintly, veins of silver running through them. Suspended in midair throughout the chamber were dozens, maybe hundreds, of glowing fragments. Each shard spun slowly, radiating pale light. They were identical to the one he had nearly touched in the corridor. His stomach dropped. A presence stirred behind him. He turned, and there it was again. The tall, pearlescent being, its movements fluid, elegant, almost reverent. It glided closer, its black eyes locking onto him with unbearable intensity. Elliot staggered backward. "Stay away!" But the being did not stop. It raised one hand, and a shard drifted down from above, hovering in its palm. Its glow reflected in those dark, endless eyes. The voice unfurled inside his skull. Smoother this time, coaxing. "You are ready." Elliot shook his head violently. "No, I don't want it." The shard pulsed, a heartbeat of light. His wrists burned. The circle etched into his skin flared brighter in response, as though calling to the fragment. Elliot gritted his teeth. "Why me? Why are you doing this?" The being tilted its head. Its voice carried both sorrow and inevitability. "You were chosen before birth. It is written in your pattern, in your blood. You are a vessel, a bridge, a bridge." The word scraped across him like a blade. Another voice, the other one, rumbled faintly at the edge of his consciousness. The voice of broken stone, urgent and defiant. "Do not take it. Resist." Elliot's mind reeled. Two voices, two commands. One soft and binding, the other raw and desperate. His skull felt like it would split apart. The tall being stepped closer, offering the shard. Its light washed over him, warm and hypnotic. Memories stirred again, fragments of a childhood he couldn't fully place. Nights of being carried upward through silver air. Glimpses of this same chamber. His father's terrified face. Had this already happened to him before? The being's voice deepened. "Without the shard, you are incomplete. With it, you will become what you were meant to be." Elliot clenched his fists, trembling. "What if I don't want to be what you meant? What if I just want to be me?" The being lowered its head, almost pitying. "You have no choice." The shard drifted closer, inches from his chest now. Its light pierced his skin, illuminating his veins. His body arched involuntarily, as though pulled by a magnetic field. His knees buckled. He wanted to scream, but his throat locked tight. Then a sound split the chamber, a low, resonant hum, growing louder. The shards suspended above trembled violently, their light flickering. The columns along the walls shuddered. The tall being froze. Its black eyes darted upward. The hum became a roar. From the darkness of the dome above, a tear opened, a jag wound in the air itself. Out of it poured a storm of black shapes, flickering like shadows made solid. They swarmed the chamber, their forms shifting between insect and flame. Their voices crashed into Elliot's skull. "He is not yours." The chamber dissolved into chaos. The tall being raised its arms, light flaring around it like a shield. Shards exploded in showers of sparks, spinning wildly through the air. The swarm darted between them, shattering fragments, swallowing light, Elliot dropped to the floor, covering his head. His wrists burned like molten iron. Through his fingers he saw shards bursting, raining down like glass. The chamber filled with the smell of ozone, the crackle of colliding forces. The tall being turned its gaze back to him, its voice cutting through the din. Choose. Now, the shard hovered over Elliot's chest, quivering between him and the void swarm. Its light throbbed, impatient. His skin blistered under the mark on his wrist. The swarm shrieked, "Refuse it, or you are lost." The voices collided in his skull, tearing his thoughts apart. He screamed, the sound ripped from his throat at last. His vision blurred, his body convulsed, and then, silence. Everything froze. The swarm halted mid-motion, the tall being locked in place, the shards suspended in still air. The chamber itself seemed to hold its breath. Elliot floated upward, weightless once more. The shard trembling inches from his chest, a third voice entered his mind, one he had never heard before. Calm, deep, resonant, Elliot Reeve. Decide what you are. The shard surged forward. The chamber hung in stillness. Elliot floated in a cradle of frozen light, breath shallow, chest burning. The shard hovered before him, pulsing like a heart outside its body. All around him, time had been shattered. The swarm's black wings hung motionless in midair. The tall, pearlescent being was a statue of radiance, arms raised, eyes unblinking. Shards were suspended in the air like stars caught in amber, and yet Elliot could move. His hands trembled as he reached toward the fragment. The heat from it licked his skin, though it hadn't yet touched him. His wrists seared, the circle glowing white-hot. Veins illuminated like rivers of fire beneath his flesh. That third voice, the one that had cut through chaos, rumbled again. Steady as a drumbeat, Elliot Reeve, you are not their vessel. You are not their prey. You are something in between. Decide. His throat was raw, but he forced out a whisper. Who are you? The voice did not answer directly. It vibrated from within the shard itself. Your kind forgets what it is. But deep in your bones, deeper than memory, you are more than victim, more than cattle. You are a maker, a breaker. Choose what you will become. Elliot's stomach twisted. His head throbbed with the weight of voices. On one side, the tall being, promising completion, unity, transcendence. On the other, the swarm, promising rebellion, freedom, refusal. Both spoke with authority. Both demanded his soul. And now, a third. He clenched his fists, shaking his head violently. I don't understand. I'm just a man. I'm just me. The shard pulsed brighter, answering, no, you are the fracture, the in-between. That is why both sides fear you. A shiver crawled up his spine, images swarmed his vision. His father screaming under a ceiling of blue light. His childhood dreams of being lifted skyward. His mother whispering lullabies with fear in her eyes. The circle etched into his wrist like a brand, not new, but ancient, carried through his bloodline. Maybe he had been chosen. Maybe this moment had been following him his entire life. He touched the shard. It was ice and fire at once. A million voices flooded his skull. Stars exploding. Worlds dying. Countless abductees screaming in chambers like this one. The shard was a library of pain and power. He jerked his hand back, chest heaving. No, he whispered, shaking. No, I won't be your bridge. I won't be your weapon. I won't. The tall being's eyes glowed, as though time itself strained to resume. The swarm quivered at the edges of stillness. Black wings trembling. The third voice spoke again. Softer now. Then carve your own path. The shard quaked violently, its light warping into jagged edges. Cracks spread across it, glowing white-hot like molten veins. Elliot realized in horror what he was about to do. He was breaking it. No. Wait, he gasped, but it was too late. The shard shattered in his hands with a deafening crack. Light poured into him, blinding. His chest seared, his veins burned as though filled with liquid fire. He screamed, a sound torn from the depths of his soul. His body convulsed in the air, suspended between collapse and transcendence. The chamber came alive again. The swarm screeched as the light exploded outward, dissolving dozens of their black forms into ash. The tall being staggered, shielding itself, its perfect composure broken. The columns around the chamber fractured, sending arcs of lightning along the walls. Elliot fell to the floor, gasping, his vision flickering in and out. The mark on his wrist had changed. No longer a circle. It had fractured, split into 3 jagged lines, forming a symbol that seemed to writhe beneath his skin. The tall being's voice thundered, no longer calm. Fool, you cannot destroy the shard, only release it. The swarm's voices howled in unison. He carries it now. The shard is within him, and him before he becomes. They surged toward him, a tide of darkness. But Elliot rose. His body shook, yet a strange energy hummed beneath his skin. His veins glowed faintly, his breath shimmered in the cold air. He raised his hand instinctively, and a wave of force burst outward, throwing the swarm back in an eruption of shattered light. For a moment, silence. His chest heaved. His eyes burned. He realized the shard was inside him now. The tall being lowered its arms, eyes wide, not in anger this time, but something far stranger, fear. You are no longer bridge. It whispered. You are fracture. Elliot's knees buckled. The energy surged violently through him, ripping at the edges of his humanity. His vision blurred into overlapping worlds, the chamber, the forest, the night sky, an endless river of stars. The swarm gathered again, their black forms coalescing into a monstrous shape that filled the chamber. Wings stretching wide, the tall being stepped back, leaving Elliot alone before it. If you survive this, it said, you will not be the same. You will not be Elliot Reeve. Elliot clenched his jaw, body trembling, light leaking from his skin like cracks in glass. I don't care, he rasped. I just don't want to be theirs. The swarm roared, descending upon him like a storm of living shadow. Elliot screamed as the chamber dissolved into fire, glass, and the sound of tearing stars. The swarm descended. 1,000 black wings, serrated shadows shrieking in unison, converged upon Elliot like a tidal wave of nightmares. The chamber shook under their fury, shards shattering, walls collapsing in quakes of thunderous light. Elliot staggered backward, chest heaving, every breath burning like fire. The shard within him pulsed wildly, tearing at the seams of his body. His skin glowed, veins luminous, each heartbeat a detonation of light threatening to rupture him from the inside out. The tall being, once serene, now silent, stood apart, its black eyes locked on him, unreadable. No gesture of aid, no attempt to stop the swarm. Only watchfulness, as though this was the outcome it had always expected. Elliot braced himself. His hands shook, but when he raised them, streams of energy flared outward, forming a shield of fractured light around him. The swarm collided with it, clawing and screeching, their forms writhing like oil on fire. The voices screamed in his head, you are ours. You are nothing without us. You are food. You are flesh. You are fear. Elliot roared back, voice cracking. I am not yours. The light inside him surged in response, blasting outward in a shock wave. Dozens of the creatures disintegrated into black mist, shrieking as they dissolved into nothing. The chamber's floor cracked, pillars crumbled, and the dome above split to reveal a vast void of stars. Elliot fell to his knees, panting. His vision fractured into overlapping realities, the chamber, the forest outside, a field of infinite night. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. The shard's voice spoke within him, calm, resonant, eternal. You have broken me. Now you carry me. But you are not built to hold this power. The fracture will widen. He gritted his teeth. Then help me finish this before it breaks me apart. The shard pulsed in agreement. His body lifted into the air, suspended in a cocoon of blazing light. The swarm reeled back, hissing, wings folding as the glow intensified. Elliot's eyes shone white, his chest radiating like a newborn star. And then, he let go. The explosion was silent. A wave of brilliance rolled outward, pure and consuming. The swarm was obliterated, their shadows burning away like frost under morning sun. The chamber collapsed entirely, its walls dissolving into cascading fragments of light. Elliot felt himself unraveling with it, body splitting into threads of brilliance. Humanity melting into something vast, infinite. His memories fluttered like pages in a storm, childhood nights staring at the stars. His father's trembling hands, the fear in his mother's lullabies. his own loneliness, his yearning, his stubborn refusal to be claimed. And through it all, a single truth: he had chosen not to be theirs. Not a vessel, not a slave, not a weapon. He had chosen to be fractured. The tall being lifted its gaze as the light consumed everything. For the first time, its voice faltered. The balance is undone. The world dissolved. He awoke lying in the forest. The air was still. The night sky above him was quiet, stars glittering faintly. The meadow was empty, no blue beams, no towering beings, no swarm. Only the whisper of wind in the trees and the cool damp of the earth beneath him. Elliot sat up slowly, trembling. His chest ached, but when he pressed his hand to his wrist, the mark remained, fractured lines glowing faintly, as though carved into his very bones. He staggered to his feet. The forest was the same, and yet not. The air hummed faintly, carrying a resonance only he could feel. The world felt thinner, more fragile, as though one step might tip him into the void beyond. He walked for hours, or maybe minutes. Time was slippery now. At last, he reached the edge of town. The streets were empty. Every light and every window burned as though untouched by sleep. The world carried on, unaware of what had nearly unraveled. Elliot leaned against a lamppost, gasping, trembling. He was alive, but he was not the same. The shard whispered faintly inside him, "This is only beginning." Elliot closed his eyes, tilting his head back toward the stars. They no longer looked distant. They looked close, watching, waiting. He whispered, voice raw, "If they come back, I'll be ready." His wrist glowed faintly in answer. The night deepened. The town slept peacefully, and in the silence above, far beyond the reach of human eyes, a ripple spread across the stars as though something enormous shifted. Watching the small figure below, waiting,